Oh, well, thank you very much for coming today. I'm very excited to get to talk to a fresh audience about this project because I've been working on it for a few years now. So it's nice to have some fresh faces that haven't heard about it before. I work with Natural Resources Northern York, and this is one of the Australian Government Biodiversity Fund projects. So it's a very big geographical scale and a long temporal scale. So we've only got a short period of time today, so I'm just going to do a very quick highlight. And I think hopefully the theme of this will work in nicely with the theme of the conference, because I'm going to particularly focus on the collaborative partnerships that we've had to do the monitoring aspects of this project. And then I'll just briefly cover a little bit about what we've been doing with the on-ground works side of things as well. So just to let you know where we are, in the Northern York region, the 4 catchments that are of focus are the Wallocra area in the north, then coming down you've got the Broughton, and then you come down to the Wakefield, and you come down to the Light catchment area. Now the Light River cross borders into the Adelaide Mount Lofty Natural Resources region as well, so we've also been working in partnership with them, which has been really good to help us get some bigger scale outcomes across the full scope of the project. So the 2 main areas, as I said, that I'm going to talk about today is the collaborative baseline monitoring that we've been establishing in partnership with a number of NGOs and contractors and other bodies, and also in conjunction with the Adelaide Mount Lofty as well, covering a number of different types of monitoring in these areas, focusing on the properties where we're doing the on-ground works. Now the on-ground works that we've been doing have included doing fencing, particularly riparian along the creeks fencing, but also some patches in the areas near the creeks as well. And also where needed, we've been looking at creating off-creek watering points where the stock access is impacted by that fencing or the other works that we're doing. We've also done a whole lot of weed control, both in working to support landholders with declared weed control, but also working to focus on woody weeds in the riparian areas, and then doing a whole lot of revegetation planting to help back up that as well. So in terms of the monitoring, as I said, the bush condition monitoring, we've been working with mostly Nature Conservation Society on that one, and that's been our, I guess, base for getting the current situation in each of those sites. Where we've been focusing in the north, let's get the pointer working again. So this is Mount Remarkable National Park. You've got Melrose down here at the top end, if you like, of the catchment for the Wallocra Creek, and you've got Wilmington up here. So you've got Wallocra Creek running north up towards Lake Torrens, and then Spring Creek coming out of the park and running into the Wallocra Creek up there. So we've been working with the landholders on some of those properties, and as I said, setting up those bush condition monitoring sites to give us the baseline of vegetation. Down the other main area in the Northern York region that we've been working is in the Wakefield Catchment, and similarly the Adelaide Mount Lofty have been doing on-ground works of the same sort over in the Light Catchment area, but I won't focus so much in my talk on that today. The Wakefield Catchment, we've achieved some really good landscape outcomes here, working from the top end of the catchment up near Munro, up here, all the way through past Auburn and down as far as Balaclava. It does continue as out to Port Wakefield as well, but for this project we've focused on the upper end of that main river channel. And we've worked with about 35 landholders in total along that top 2/3 of the river, which is basically every landholder through that section in one capacity or another, so that's been really good outcome. So with the bush condition monitoring, they do a range of different vegetation things which you may or may not be aware, so I just wanted to sort of quickly go through these because there's a lot of other monitoring information to cover as well. As I said, we're primarily looking in riparian river redgum woodlands. So we've been getting a range of different results. A lot of the sites have come, as far as diversity that's there in the existing state, have come in the sort of poor to moderate category, and lots of weeds present and lower levels of natives. So that's given us some useful information. The structural diversity, a lot of these areas are previously and currently were grazed or cleared. So there's a lot of sites where we've got reasonable canopy of these good mature red gum trees with not much shrubby layer stuff happening underneath, and usually a mixture of largely exotic grasses and maybe a few sedges and that sort of thing along the edges of the creeks. Sort of worse condition in the north catchment versus the south, and obviously some of that's going to be due to differences in rainfall and the different nature of the environments in those two catchments, as well as those land use issues. Tree health, this also links into the river red gum monitoring, which I'll mention quickly as well. We've found that generally the recruitment, and this is across the region as a whole, it has been generally fairly poor. A lot of good seed production, but just not getting the young trees growing. And we also have issues of dieback as well, which I'll cover that a little bit more in the red gums as well. But the trees that are there are providing some good habitat qualities, so that's good news. Generally, the total grazing pressure across most of the sites has been found to be pretty good, which is reassuring. So obviously, the current management is showing that they're doing okay in terms of the impact on those sites. So the next thing, as I said, we've been doing some river red gum monitoring, and Dr. Anne Jensen has been doing this program for us for a fair while now, which has been great. She started doing that back in 2008, and this is the poster, which you'll see when we have lunch very shortly in the gardens, in the lawns out there. So there should be some little A4 copies, which I've got more of, so if they run out, just let me know. And what she has been doing is looking at sites all across the southern Flinders and mid-north catchments in that area before this project started, because there was some community concern about the health of the trees. And for more information on her results, I will refer you to the posters and to Anne herself, so to give you the details. But what we've been able to do in this project is add some more sites on these on-ground works properties that have given us another layer, if you like, to what she had started in terms of the river red gum health and how those communities are tracking. So that just gives you a bit of a brief look at the sorts of things that Anne has been studying, but as I said, I'll definitely refer you to the poster and to Anne herself to get some more detail. I do put her reports onto our website, so we do have the river red gum report linked there. I think I'm yet to put this year's on there, so that should be up there hopefully in the near future if you'd like to have a look at some more detail beyond the poster. We've also been doing some permanent pools monitoring. That's been our Northern New York staff doing that, and just to get us a bit of an idea about some of the water quality, how that's tracking. Generally, most of the sites seem to have good nitrate phosphate levels, which is always nice to know, especially if you've got stock and those sort of things nearby. But we do tend to have fairly salty water, so that's certainly reflected in the results that we've been finding. So fortunately, we still seem to be able to support some reasonable macrovertebrates communities, and so there's a bit of a list of some of the more frequent ones that we find. We use a fairly simple level of identification. We just use the old water watch sheets that were created that really just identifying down to that order type of level, so you work out if you've got a dragonfly or is it a beetle or is it a bug, that sort of thing. So what we were trying to do is create a bit of a system that can be repeated by community members and also by schools as well. So we didn't want to have it that you had to be an entomologist basically to do the project. And also I think it just gives us some really useful information to be able to share with people as well. And we incorporate this sort of thing into lots of our education programs as well. So that seems to work really well at getting, everyone likes to see live things swimming around in the tubs, I think, so it always works well. We've also, within the macroinvertebrates, we largely have been getting lots of tolerant species, as you can imagine, with salinity and with the ephemeral systems that we've got and the refuge areas that these pools often are through most of the year. But we do get some of those very sensitive creatures still getting recorded as well, so that's really exciting when we get to see a few of those as well. We've been doing some bird surveys, so that's been really interesting. Dave Potter, who is with BirdLife Australia, he's been doing those for us. and using the BirdLife methodology, BirdLife Australia methodology over the last 3 years of the projects. So that's giving us some good baseline information about what birds are in and around those riparian areas. And yeah, so that's really giving us a good picture there. He has been finding a fairly similar list of natives between the Wlockra and the Wakefield Catchment areas in some of those more common ones that he's seeing. So that's, you know, interesting information that we're gathering. And also we did a fish survey a bit earlier in the project, and that was working with Sardi. So that's been really good, and that was a learning experience for me to see how those sort of things were done that I hadn't had anything to do with before. So we did a little bit of a different approach with the fish. We did a bit more of a across the catchment, not focusing so much on the on-ground works properties. So we did some general sites across the Broughton River, up here in Broughton River catchment in the north, down the Rocky and the Broughton River itself. And then we did some sites in and around the on-ground works on the Wakefield area. So with the monitoring that the Sardi guys do, we did that one about 2 months after that Bangor fire came through, which was really interesting because that Rocky River in particular had some sites that had still had quite a lot of black soot in the water, and where we've got the 14 out of 19 sites that actually recorded fish, about half of the ones that didn't were the ones in the upper end of that catchment. So it will be interesting when hopefully we get to revisit the fish survey in the final year of the project next year, to hopefully revisit some of those sites and see what recovery has happened with the few years now of winter flows and that sort of thing. With salty creeks and our sort of areas, you get lots of mosquito fish. So that's certainly what the guys found. We did find natives, which I was very nicely surprised because I really didn't know what we were going to get because we hadn't really had any fish surveys done of any nature really for a long time in these catchments. So they did get some reasonable numbers of the common galaxias and western blue spot gobies. So that was nice for me to get to see what these native fish look like as well. But yes, lots of mosquito fish and lots of goldfish as well. So they also recorded the presence of the non-target taxa. So things like the shrimp and the frogs and the yabbies and turtles and things like that. And again, that's a really good engagement tool. We had certainly had a number of landholders who were sort of come down to see what we were doing, and we could show them, you know, some of these other creatures as well as the other things, that the fish as well. So that was really, really interesting for them to look at. And then lastly, I just wanted to just quickly let you know what we've been doing with the on-ground works themselves. That's been another whole collaborative partnership in and of itself, working with Greening Australia, Trees for Life, conservation volunteers, and a number of different contractors with the fencing, etc. And that's been some really good engagement opportunities, and getting people out there from international students to Adelaide to local volunteers. And just to let you know, overall, what we've done is across about 73 properties, both private and public owned, we've done by the end of the project, mid-2017, we would have done over 50 kilometres of fencing, more than 20 stock water points, weed control across 4,000 hectares, and revegetation across 440 hectares. And all of the project wouldn't have been possible without all of that list of people. Obviously Australian Government for the funding, in particular for all of those landholders that we've worked with across all of that time and all of that land and all of these years of the project. It has been very appreciated and a really good experience for me as a project officer. Thank you.